Welcome to Bluebird Wellbeing's podcast, Beyond the Veil, a platform to discuss mental health. If you are listening to this, please follow, subscribe, and share it to your friends so that we can uphill our impact.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast, Beyond the Veil. This is our third episode of the podcast series organized by Bluebird Wellbeing, where we aim to discuss various topics and spread awareness regarding mental illness with various guests. Today, we will be discussing a very well-known and yet not much talked about form of mental illness called depression with our respected guest, Palakh Khanna, who is the CEO of the international youth organization called Break the Ice. Hi, Palakh. Welcome to Beyond the Veil. How are you feeling today?
Thank you so much for your kind invitation, firstly. And I'm feeling really good, to be honest, and I'm just ready to go.
Yeah. So before we begin, please introduce yourself to our listeners about what you do, what your organization Break the Ice is about, and how you found your interest in mental health.
So, hi everyone, this is Palakh. I am 19 years old. I'm from New Delhi, India. I am a student, but assuming a lot of things that I'm very passionate about. I am a social entrepreneur, a mentor, teacher, environmentalist, and I have an organization called Break the Ice, where we talk about taboo. It's not just mental health, it's bullying, severe topics like suicide, women violence, LGBT, everything which is shunned by society, basically. And we are a UNSDS and youth member organization, and we've reached out to 15,000 people, and we have a team of 50 plus members. And we just aim at expanding this impact and creating a youth community which is enlightened so that they can honestly talk about anything that they want to, irrespective of what.
So that's amazing. So that was amazing. So as you know by the title of this podcast, we will be discussing depression, a common condition that affects about 5% of adults around the world. So in your words, how do you understand depression? What can you tell us about it? Because it is a very broad term itself, and many people see it in many different ways. What is your definition of it?
Okay, so firstly, I am a psychology student, so I understand that my definition of depression would be very, very, technical. And I believe that it is, and I know that it is a major depressive disorder. And it's serious in the sense that it can impact a person deeply, both emotionally as well as physically, if not taken care of well. And it is a group of conditions which can be seen through a person's daily activities, their mood, and it's not very, very clear to notice someone being depressed, but it's very, very important to notice it around you. So yeah, that's my definition.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And what can you tell us about the signs we should look for in someone when they're experiencing depression? And more specifically, what are the differences between experiencing mild, moderate, or severe depression?
Okay. So there is a big difference, to be honest. And people these days, they assume that if they're sad, they're depressed. But that's really, really a wrong interpretation of the disorder itself. Depression is not just about a persistent process or a feeling of sadness. It has so many other symptoms. And like I mentioned, it's difficult to just catch it. But when you see all the symptoms together, it's pretty understandable what the person is going through. And it's not just about a persistent feeling of sadness. There is a change in appetite, a change in sleep, tremendous insomnia, as well as, a lack of concentration in anything which used to interest the person earlier. And their energy levels are so down that you can figure it out instantly.
Yeah, that's totally true. People do believe that just because they're sad, they might be depressed, but there's a huge difference. So thank you so much, Palakh, for clarifying the definition. Because, these days we have been seeing many people, especially youth, casually using the word depression around as a term to express how, like I said, or like you said, sadness or how bad they're feeling that day. So what are your thoughts on this? And do you believe that there is any negative impact of the casual usage of such term, especially on someone who's actually depressed?
Yes, definitely. So, people these days, irrespective of whether there is a growing awareness term about the disorder and the seriousness about it, it's ironic that people today actually use the term more in their everyday lives, which is, like I mentioned, very ironic because today there is a lot of, but maybe there is a lack of understanding of its definition itself, because there is used in such a casual way, and it will definitely affect the people who are actually going through a phase of depression, because it's a major depressive disorder. People need help in it. And just because everybody is saying that they're depressed in their casual way, it's, become a casual sort of term. And people who actually need help, they don't get help simply because people assume that it's a daily affair. So obviously it's deeply affecting them of not only their treatment, but also the nagging which comes along with it, because and society has shunned the term, stigmatized it so much because of its casual use that you actually need help are also not getting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so speaking of society, different societies also have different depictions of the word psychiatrist. For example, in my mother tongue, the word psychiatrist would translate to doctors for crazy people. But people suffering from depression, they're not crazy. They're far from being crazy. It's an actual disease. So what do you think about this? Why do you think this is caused?
So like I've mentioned, and that's why I open Break the Ice, because stigmas and taboos exist so much in our society that they're assumed to be the truth. And because it's so prevalent in every society that it, irrespective of what the term is in every language or in every society, the perceived stigma attached to it is that it's abnormal and it's for the crazy. A big issue, because again, people who need help, they're not getting it just because they're assumed to be crazy or abnormal, away from the normal. But it's actually not that. It's just that their normal life has been affected so deeply that it's affected them both physically, mentally, and emotionally, and they need help to come out of it. It's actually simply that. But just because of these terms, just because of perceived, attributions of the term, it's causing.
Yeah, totally. So now coming to movies and media, we have a huge influence of that. Everybody loves watching movies. So in movies or in media in general, viewers often are exposed to the inaccurate portrayal of such mental illness. For example, coming of age movies, the characters who are suffering from depression are often portrayed as somebody who is violent or somebody who cannot lead their lives normally. Again, leading to, abnormal people or crazy people as what people would think of them. So it's safe to say that it is far from true, because depression is not negative and it shouldn't be, right? And neither is it violent. So what do you think about it? Do you think it's having a negative influence on society and how they see people suffering from depression?
I completely agree with the media's portrayal of such an incorrect way of showing the mental illness, because both news as well as entertainment, media in its total sense, provides such a dramatic and a distorted image of mental illness. And not only violence, they highlight unpredictability, they highlight dangerous, they create that fear and that rejection for that character just because they're shown as depressed. And it's absolutely incorrect, because not only for people who are depressed, to be honest, in its real sense, but also who might be going through a bad time, because it's just because of the reinforcement of the fear, the rejection from society, and that dramatic portrayal, it further triggers negative emotions in viewers as such, for both people who actually have depression and people who are just going through a bad time, because they feel, it's that reinforcement. Get rejected from society if you show this emotion, and that's terribly wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and it's definitely wrong, but we really need to change this whole mindset of the youth. And I really hope we can see more movies which are actually portraying depression as it is. So last but not least, Palak, for us and the listeners out there, how do you think we can help and support people with depression or expressing depression-like symptoms? Because there are people out there who wants to help, but they do not know how. So how would you like to give them their tips?
Okay, so it's very important to remember that verbal as well as just emotional support is also enough for people who are depressed. You don't need to continuously tell them that you're there for them, because they are in a state where they may not want to hear that also, because they want to be alone, because they're in that state of instant sadness that they feel that they're automatically alone. What you need to do is not verbally support them, but instant stand by them, from the back, basically. And along with that, not just physical support or maybe emotional support, but what can be done is encouraging the practice of positive self-talk. Because once the person begins that practice and practices it, maybe because you force them, that even if it's forced, after a while they would begin to feel better about themselves, and a positive self-talk can their beliefs about themselves, which again the society has caused that issue, because they are being told as you're crazy, you are rejected by society. So someone needs to put that self-talk into the picture, self-talk into the picture, so that they believe again in positivity and they try to come out of it. And along one another, an important thing that psychology also talks about for depression is guided imagery. So what it is all about is, when depression can be very tough to cope with, especially if you're dragged down by negative thoughts. So if you just practice the process of guided imagery, in some time you can actually overcome depression totally. Like you can come out of the disorder as entirely. So I feel like more than verbal, physical support and emotional support, and along with that, 2-3 strategies which could help in the long run.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's better to just listen to someone. You have no idea how much this as a skill like listening could help someone. And in a world with such negativity, if you could be there and be positive, if you could be the one who is spreading positivity, it could help them so much. So Palak, thank you so much for doing this with us. You were amazing. And would you like to say anything to the listeners of this podcast who are currently having depression or know loved ones who do?
Okay, so I just feel like you just need to just keep going and also think that you can overcome this as soon as possible. That's it.
So once again, thank you so much for your time. We wish you a very good luck with your organization, Break the Ice, and we wish you a lot of success. Until then, this is Beyond the Veil.
Thank you.
Oh my God, you were great.